It was absolutely nuts. So it was awesome. Anyway, here we go. As funny as I totally forgot about baseball.
I meant to text this weekend. I'm glad I thought of it now. I fucking forgot about the weekend.
It's a big game. Yeah, the big game. Well, we had a game on Saturday that we lost, but then the big game was on Monday against the team that beat us twice. Anyway, okay, here we go. Because I'm excited about it. It was awesome. Wait to hear it. What's up, everybody, and welcome to Bump and Run. I'm Pete Colasano, joined, as always, by my friend Scott Bracey for the first time live on Facebook and on YouTube. What's going on, dude?
Good evening, sir. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, whoever is joining us. And if you are on social media, on Facebook or YouTube, I think you can actually chat with us. Maybe. I don't know if I'll answer or not, but you can send us a message through Facebook. It might come through our Restream feed. We'll see. It'd be a nice test to see if anybody is. You just asked me about our baseball team. So we had a big game last Saturday against the second place team, and they ended up beating us because we were short on pitchers. Two of my best pitchers are on travel ball, so they couldn't pitch, and I'm throwing out not our best pitchers.
Knuckleballers. You're throwing out knuckleballers.
Not our best pitchers, okay?
Junkers.
And, well, frankly, they didn't either, and it was kind of a walk fest. And just so you know, there's like an hour and 45-minute time limit on these games.
Yeah.
We made it through 3.5 innings. And the time limit was up. Yeah.
All right.
So
what, the over?
It wasn't good. Yeah, it wasn't good. We ended up losing. But more importantly, this past Monday, we played a team that beat us 2 days in a row a couple weeks ago. We were, again, short on a couple players. They played us back-to-back on a Friday and Saturday, beat us both times. Once they hammered us, once they beat us by one. And I have to tell you, for 9 and 10-year-olds, this might have been like the best baseball game I've ever seen in my life. Final score 4-3, 6 full innings. Like 6 full innings all the way to the bottom of the 6th. So we get out to a 2-0 lead right off the jump. Like we both had our best pitchers on the mat, and both kids just were actually fantastic. We just hit the ball top of the order, comes up clutch, gets a bunch of hits. We scored 2 runs. Of course, we die with a man on third, but that's the way it goes. So we're up 2-0, and it's 2-0 through 3 innings. Like at that point, nobody scores. My pitcher's just mowing them down. Their pitcher's mowing us down. And it's just, we finished 3 innings in like a half an hour. It was insane. So bottom of the 4th, they get 3 runs. Couple errors on a couple hits back. My pitcher hit a couple kids. And then a nice little hit. They scored 3 runs. So now they're up 3-2. Bottom of the 4th. Yeah. So we get up top of the 5th. Stugats. We get nothing. No runs. Right? It's just. It was the middle to bottom of our order. 1, 2, 3.
Very stale.
And we have my second best pitcher comes in, and it's kind of the bottom of their order, and he has a really good inning, no runs. So we get to the top of the 6th, and we're starting off with our last hitter, our number 11 hitter, and he's not the most aggressive at the plate. If you understand what I'm saying, he really doesn't. He's reluctant to swing.
Yep.
And first or second pitch, he gets hit by a pitch. And it's like, ooh, you okay? Like, yes. Like, all right, he got hit. He's on base.
Guy News Bears, Rudy Stein.
It was like, yes, he'll be okay. Get him ice, get him a cast, get him whatever he needs. Just get somebody to first base. So then the top of our order comes up, and we get a couple timely hits. Bing, bing, bing. We score 2, and we got two outs, runner on third. And passed ball, and a kid tries to get home, but the ball just came off the fence. Nice for the catcher, and they get him out of the plate. I was like, oh, so we're only up 4-3 going into the bottom of the 6th, and they have their 2, 3, 4 hitters coming up. So, and this is where it gets cool. It gets cool from my perspective as a coach, and I'll explain. So, their number 2 hitter gets an out. I think he strikes him out. We strike him out. Number 3 hitter is he's a beast. He gets up and just laser shots one to left field, like a line drive, low line drive. Gets right between second and third, but it's a rocket. Our left fielder gets right in front of it, fields it perfectly, throws it to the cutoff, shortstop turns, throws it to second base, runner stalled at first.
Nice.
Like, and why it was so cool for me is because we work on cutoffs all the time.
Yeah.
Because at that age especially, it's like the ball can go flying anywhere.
Absolutely.
So every practice we work on cutoffs. Like we're getting it to. I don't care who's on base, where they are, get it to second base.
So satisfying.
Get it to second. So he just picked this thing, and we talk about it all the time. And we stalled this kid at first, right? And he got a single instead of a double. Here's why it's huge. Runner on first, 1 out. Now, in our league, because of their age and ability, you can only steal once per batter. So, like, if you steal second, you can't steal
the rest
again. Not for the rest of the inning, just for the rest of that batter.
Oh, so we can't go anywhere.
So you can't just keep bing, 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 because the catchers aren't ready for that. So it's actually a very good rule. It's a smart rule. But here's why it's huge. Runner on first, 1 out. Next pitch, he steals second. Okay? My pitcher strikes that kid out. 2 outs.
Wow.
Next pitch, he steals third. So now there's a runner on third with 2 outs, but he can't go anywhere.
So even if it's a pass ball, he's stuck there.
Yeah, he already stole, so pass ball, you can't go. That's considered a steal. So that's it. Yep. We strike that kid out to end the game. Player gets stalled on third. And why that's huge is because if he would have gotten a double, he would have stole third with 1 out, and he could have stole home with 2 outs, and at the very least tied the game up.
Yeah.
So I pointed that out to the kids after, like how we talk about this all the time, hit the cutoff, get it to second. It was a perfect play, and look what happens. I go, these little things are how we win games, and we ended up winning 4-3, and it was so cool. It was just so cool.
As a coach, that makes you so happy and satisfied because a prime example, this is why we do this.
Yes.
That exact reason.
And I pointed that out.
It makes the kids understand that.
I pointed that out after the game. I said, Ethan did it without hesitation. He fielded it cleanly. He didn't have to think about it. He just rose up, threw it to the cutoff, shortstop turn, threw it to second. Player was stopped at first. He ended up with a single. So we look at that and we say, what's the big deal? What's the big deal is he would have scored if he didn't do that, or could have scored if he didn't do that. And they saw the importance of it, and it was just awesome. So we're at the very least, we're tied for first. We have one more game tomorrow night, Thursday, because we're taping on Wednesday here. We have a game tomorrow night. I'm going to say we should win because we're playing the last place team. You don't count it as a win, of course, but we should win. And if we do, I think we're first place, and I think we get a bye, which is nice also.
Well, that the win on Saturday or Sunday, whenever it was, is big too because you finally get the monkey off your back with that team.
Yes, yeah.
So that also helps.
So it was very cool. We're looking good. Like I said, we have given up by far the least runs in the league, but we've also scored the second least. So we pitch, we play defense, and we get some timely hits and runs, and we got to rely on that. But if we do that, we're pretty solid. So
important question. Did you buy the kids snow cones or chipwiches or something?
No, I said get out of here. I'll see you next week.
What a horrible coach. Jesus.
I'm a cheapo. I'm a cheapo. I ain't got that kind of salary. So we have
snow cones out $6 a piece.
And it seems like that, dude. It seems like you got to take out a small loan just to get a couple beers at Yankee Stadium. So we have a ton actually to get to. We got PGA Championship with Phil, of course. NBA playoffs are actually like kind of interesting, but I have some fascinating ratings to show you that shows you kind of how far things have gone in the sports world and what matters most. It's not just sports that matters, and I'll explain that. Jacksonville, in some weird twist of, I don't know, electronic fate, will say, somehow released the ratings on a number of players that they did not draft, many of which were drafted by the Jets. So we'll talk about that. Of course, we have our AFC East analysis of what we see coming for this coming season, and something that I think both of us are excited about. We've been looking forward to for a little over a week now. Josh Hennig of ESPN Radio South Jersey will be joining us at 7:30. And we're going to talk some Philly sports with him, maybe some UFC, maybe some other. I have a question about the draft, something that's going on in the NFL that I think all sports fans are looking at and saying, where is this going to go? And we've talked about it previously, and I'll get to that with you. So we have a number of things to talk about. Oh, and we're going to talk UFC with him as well. And I'm actually God bless you. Did it come out? I didn't hear anything. Man.
No,
I didn't hear anything. Well, kind of. God bless you. But we're going to start. We're going to start with this past Sunday's PGA Championship, and if you'll allow me to, I wanted to kind of point out a couple things. In all golf majors, it seems like there are always two stars. The tournament starts on Thursday, and the first star that immediately arrives whenever you turn on that first day is the course. We all look at the Masters, Augusta National. You can look at this course this past Pebble Beach. We love to see the old courses in England and Scotland. That first day of a major is almost inevitably about the course and how difficult it is, how gorgeous it is, how things are set up. This course was so interesting because there was sand everywhere, but they didn't consider them sand traps. Like the players, in a very unusual setup, players were allowed to ground their clubs, take practice swings in they called them sandy areas.
Yeah,
and it was
two things
strange
about that. It was, you know what? That's a good point. You brought that up. Practicing swinging in the sand, and then they could use rangefinders on this course too.
Yes, well, this is new period. They're allowed to do this.
Yeah, I was like,
speed up play. They're doing that to speed up play.
Yeah, because some of these guys are just brutal.
So that's your first star in every major tournament, whether it's the U.S. Open, the Open Championship, PGA Championship, or the Masters. The course on Thursday is the big star, and we as fans hope that by Friday at some point, or at the very least Saturday, another star arises, and that ends up being one of the players. This year was a little strange for the Masters. I don't know that we ever had that one star that wasn't the course. Of course, we had the winner, but I don't know that any single player was the star like a Jordan Spieth or a Tiger Woods in previous Masters. But by Friday afternoon of this PGA Championship, there was a clear star, and that was Phil Mickelson. And I find it fascinating how much, as fans, we love watching old champions rise again. It is utterly fascinating to me, and I am part of that kind of segment of society that loves to see it happen. A couple years ago, when Tiger was going for the Masters, I couldn't take my eyes off it. And I'm not a Tiger guy. I'm one of the, I always look at Tiger as as the Yankees. Like, you either love him or you love hating him. And I kind of loved hating Tiger because he just was always winning. And it's like, somebody please challenge this guy. But on that day, I wanted Tiger to win because he's older. It's kind of a comeback. It was said to be impossible. And here he was pulling off the impossible. So it's like, it raises this question. What is it about like older players when they're making another run at it that we just love? I'm a Jets fan, and I've watched Tom Brady just massacre my team for 20 years. But yet, as I look back at Super Bowls, I wasn't ever really rooting, especially more recent Super Bowls. I find myself rooting for him. And I can't help but think it's because we're all kind of amazed at what's going on, at the impossible. And when we see these kind of older stars that are past their time doing the impossible or doing what's been told they can't do, I don't know, maybe it raises a little something in us that says maybe I can do something a little special also. It's also the familiar, like I've seen this before, I want to see it again. It's romantic, right? It's like, if this can't happen, he's too old. We've been told, he's come in second more times than anybody in majors other than Jack Nicklaus.
Well, it's funny you say that about feeling human or feeling that you could do something. Because my brother texted me late Sunday and it was like, how old is he, 50, 51? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, because I still have a shot.
Exactly.
So it's like,
and that's right. And we've seen it before. We saw it with Nolan Ryan when he would throw a no-hitter in his 40s, which was unbelievable, still throwing that kind of gas.
Yeah.
I mentioned Tom Brady. We loved it when we saw Derek Jeter get game-winning hits in his last season or final playoff games.
Right.
Like, we saw it with Kobe in his last game scoring 60. We love that kind of stuff. It's like it's like almost like a warm blanket that we can kind of wrap ourselves in. It's like, it's what I remember, and it's the way it's supposed to be. Even though we know it can't go on forever, for a moment, I get to kind of feel what I always loved so much.
A nice flashback.
And it reminds us. It reminds us of something good. Yes, it reminds us of something good. And this one might have been even bigger, besides the fact that he's 50, which makes me feel fantastic as someone who's rolling in on 80, on 48, not 80. I feel like 80 sometimes. I feel like 80. It may have been even bigger than that because I actually felt afterwards that may have been the close of the pandemic. Because for the first time, not only did we have fans there, that wasn't first. What we had were a mass of people when you saw the 18th hole as they're walking up to the green, people climbing over each other to take videos, to take pictures, to touch them, to feel them, to get near them. Nobody cared about a pandemic. Nobody cared about COVID, and nobody talked about it either. Nobody on television was like, oh, these people are too close to each other.
I know.
Everyone from the players to the announcers to the fans to us watching at home, we just got to enjoy it. So you may very well be able to point to this particular tournament, this particular match, and say, that right there was the end of COVID.
I thought Brooks got swallowed up in there for a while. It took him a while to get through there.
They were clearly unprepared for that. They were clear. I don't think, especially when you consider, I think they only let in 30, 40, 50% capacity. So I don't think, plus in the beginning of the week, you're not thinking, hey, when Phil at 50 is winning this tournament at the end, we better have some kind of security ready. So I'll give you one more thing about this, and then we can go back and forth about this. The NBA playoffs, and their ratings are down, but the average NBA playoff game last 2 years, 3 million people watch. We talked about the play-in tournament, the one between the Lakers and the Warriors the other night. That had 6 million. That one game was the highest rated NBA playoff game in like 4 years because it was do or die, right?
Yeah. Sunday,
PGA Championship, 13.1 million viewers.
Holy smokes. Okay,
so the biggest professional basketball game in the last 4 years got swallowed up, got more than doubled.
Yeah.
Got more than doubled.
Wow.
By Phil at the PGA Championship. Even when Tiger is in a tournament, in a major, you get about 8. When Tiger's in the hunt of a major tournament, it could be 10, 11, 12. And this one was 13. And while we love Phil and we like watching, him do his thing because he can blow up just as quickly as he can do well.
And he almost did.
It's the age, it's the fact that he made history that had us all glued. And it was really something. I didn't miss a shot. I didn't miss a single shot other than to refill my drink. It was awesome. It was really awesome. And I'm glad he did it. It
was great. And, I think I texted you Friday afternoon and I said, Phil's in the clubhouse with a lead. We're tied for the lead. And we're like, let's see if you can, Saturday's moving day, usually everywhere on a golf course. And he did his best job to give it back. I think he was up 5 strokes or 4 strokes for a long time Saturday, and then the back 9 he kind of plummeted. And I think he was only up 1 to start the day Sunday, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, it was fascinating because he doubled everybody up. Like he was 8 under, and then the next closest was 4, and then he gave that away.
And he does what Phil does. It's a roller coaster.
And then he did it. Yeah, he went double bogey back-to-back holes on Saturday.
God.
And then he kind of did it again on Sunday. He was at 10, or maybe this was Saturday, but it was like 8 and 4 on one day, 10 and 5 the other day, and you're like, it's over. And then back-to-back holes, he goes double bogey, and you're like, what the hell? Like,
and that was going on when Brooks was hitting the ball all over the place too. I thought he was going to kill somebody at some point. He couldn't hit the ball straight for like 4 or 5 straight holes. And then he's kind of still in it at the end because he's a good player.
We're looking at Phil was up 2 and going into the 18th, and everybody's like starting to celebrate. And I'm like, bro, that's Phil Mickelson, and that's Brooks. Like that guy absolutely can birdie this hole, and that guy absolutely can like double bogey this hole.
Yeah,
what are we
like?
Can we not start celebrating right now? At the very least, Brooks could have parred and Phil could have bogeyed. Like,
sure, absolutely.
At the very least, that could and it would have been a tie. So it could have been that. But it was just incredible. It was incredible to see the gallery just, the fans just coming up. I started immediately thinking Arnie's Army. Like if you ever watch some old video of Arnold Palmer coming up like the 18th, I don't know, maybe at the Masters or something. That's where the whole Arnie's Army idea came from, where they're just following him and he's just high-fiving people and enjoying it. And Phil, to his credit, and this is where Brooks Koepka, I love him as a player. And frankly, his attitude as a player or while he's playing, I love it. He don't give a shit about anybody or like, he's not trying to please anybody. He don't care. And I love it. But he could use a little help in this area when it comes to the fans. Embrace it a little, dude. Like, nobody was trying to actually take your knee out. Okay, slow down, because nobody doesn't like you. Like,
yeah,
he can learn a little bit from Phil, and Phil just ate it up. I mean, you know, Phil's had back issues in the past. Well, he probably had thumb issues from like how many thumbs up he was in the last 5-6 holes. It was incredible. So,
one thing I love what they did to the PGA was moving from August to May. I think that was a brilliant idea because in August everyone's got shit going on. You're kind of, your baseball or football's coming up, preseason game, whatever it is.
That's really why they did it.
The PGA gets lost in August. I think it was a great idea.
I agree with you. What happened was, NFL got so big.
Yeah.
And when they came up with the idea of the FedEx Cup and like the little 3-week tournament at the end of the golf season, it was in September every year. And it's like, nobody's watching. Your biggest kind of 3-week stretch of the year, nobody's watching because they're watching the NFL. So what they did is they moved that back into August. And they took the PGA Championship, moved it up, which is also smart, like you said, because now they basically do a major tournament once a month.
Yep.
For more or less once a month for 4 straight months.
And then it leads up into the playoff. Yeah.
And it leads up into the playoff, and you're not interfering. You're not getting involved with the NFL. You're letting them, have their time. Now, Ryder Cup, President's Cup will be during that time because that's a fall kind of thing. But it's a brilliant move. Again, and I still think, it is fascinating. I'll say this first. It is fascinating, the ratings jump you get with a Phil or a Tiger that you don't get right now with other guys. But those other guys are young, and I don't know that we got those numbers when Phil was young. Maybe we did when Tiger was young, but not when Phil was young. Phil wasn't Phil then. What's interesting is these guys become these names. Like Tom Brady wasn't Tom Brady that first year. We weren't watching for Tom Brady. Now we watch for Tom Brady because he's got 7 champions. You know what I mean? Like you can't compare like a Rory McIlroy's championship or a Jordan Spieth's championship to a Phil winning at 50 because he's already Phil. Yeah. It's 50. It's you can't compare it. So show me Jordan Spieth winning the Masters when he's 50, and I'll show you 15 million people watching.
Sure.
Like I guarantee it. So when Tom Watson was in the final group of the Open Championship a few years back, the ratings were bananas. And he's an American. He's not even a European. But why? Because he's older, and people are like, can this guy pull this off at 54 or whatever the hell he was at the time?
Yeah, he might have been older than that.
Can he do it? Yeah, it might have been 57. Like, you can't compare it because you're not that guy yet. You're not filled with 5 championships, 40-something wins, 15 second-place finishes in majors, like whatever those numbers actually are. So
now, did you hear the fun fact? 2 weeks ago when we did our favorite movies, you had Legend of Bagger Vance on.
Oh, I know.
Dude, they filmed that there.
What's the name of the course?
The Ocean Course?
Hiawaii
or something. Yeah, it's a pretty crazy name.
I heard him say it. I'm like, oh my God. And now I can see like Will Smith walking off into the sunset.
I was thinking
it's so funny you mentioned that. I was like, no shit. Okay, now I really like this course. Like, and I really like the movie. Because I did like the course. I mentioned in the beginning that the course is the star on Thursday, and I enjoyed this because, and I think PGA needs to do a better job of this. It can't just be for the big bangers. There's a way to reward somebody for hitting it in the fairway, not just hitting it 700 miles. And I think that this course is a perfect example of you could be long and a little off, but if you're long and a lot off, you get penalized.
You're in trouble. I agree.
Okay, so there's ways, and this tournament just showed that it doesn't just have to be for the guys who hit it a million miles. You can, whether it's making thicker rough or making obstacles or the way you set up the green, if it's a little more crowned, whatever the different ways are, penalizing for missing. Like there's ways to do that, and I like seeing that. I want to see the best players in the world have to play really good golf. And I thought this course was infinitely fair. Like we've seen U.S. Opens where it's like, dude, come on. Like a computer couldn't tell you exactly where to put that ball and it would still stay on the green. Like it's just not fair. This was very difficult. Listen, he won at what, 6 under?
6 under.
It was 6 under, right? Yeah. Like to me, like somewhere between 6 and 10, 5 and 10 under. If you're in there and that's your winner, that was a real test.
Yeah,
like,
that's
that was a real
test. That's
like
good golf, but not dominant golf. Right. It's enjoyable.
You're not just throwing darts.
Yes.
Yeah. You have to make good shots, but there are gettable holes. And
that 17th hole, was it 223 over water, bro? That par 3? Holy fuck, man.
But these guys hit these long par 3s like they don't give a shit.
They don't.
Me and you were like, what am I? I don't even have that club.
I'm just going to take the drop over there and hit 3.
Exactly. It's brutal. It's absolutely brutal.
You have a golf ball or 2?
Yeah. So I just and again, those ratings, the NBA has their own problems. LeBron James might be the first mega star in NBA history that has lower ratings as he leaves the sport than he did when he came into the sport. Like you think about like when Michael Jordan really was in his prime, and then when Michael Jordan retired, 50% of their ratings dropped out. Like they literally lost 50% of their ratings, and there was nothing they could do about it. When Larry Johnson is like your big star, you're in trouble. When Larry Bird and Magic were kind of weaning off, and Michael wasn't the man yet, there were struggles. If you look before Larry and Michael, the league was like in trouble. They almost went bankrupt. And then Larry Bird and Magic Johnson come in the league, and it's the biggest, and the ratings double, triple, and it just everything changes. LeBron James is going to be first megastar of that caliber, of that level of your Michael Jordan, Kobe's, Shaq, Larry, and Magic. Like he's going to be the first one to come in. He's going to have lower ratings than when he was in his prime, which is pathetic. It's absolutely pathetic, and it's totally earned. And totally self-inflicted. You brought this on yourself.
Absolutely.
Between your bullshit political views, and I'm not even talking about whether or not he's right or wrong. I'm just saying the fact that you're bringing politics into the sport, that people want to get away from that shit. They don't want to watch. They don't want to talk about that when they're watching sports. Between that and now this new like flipping, flopping, dropping, I'm always hurt. I saw 3. I shot the one in the middle.
Oh, I know. LeBron.
Like now he's like stealing lines from movies and stuff like that. It's like, dude, it's getting embarrassing.
He points at Steph. Oh, I can't see. It's like Steph gives a shit. Like what? Like, dude, just stop.
He's such dude. He's become like so annoying. And again, he'll be the first star in like NBA recent history that'll have lowered its ratings before he left the sport. Like incredible.
He just steps on his tongue all the time. When they're playing Steph in that playing game, he's MVP of the league. Then they go into the Suns. Oh, Chris Paul's the MVP of the league. LeBron, you can't have multiple MVPs.
Yeah, everybody's the MVP.
Because you also know you think you're the MVP of the league.
I was just going to say, who's he always lobbying for the actual MVP?
Oh, my God. I can't wait until he's gone.
I love when a guy says, if it was up to myself, I would vote for myself. Like, okay, where did you read that in a book somewhere?
Yeah.
Wordsworth? Anyway, not to bash on LeBron.
Listen,
interesting.
Bash what you want, my friend.
Yeah, I know. He's earned it. Interesting scenario happened. Not a big deal. I don't think this was as big a deal as some people made it out to be, because I mean, if the numbers were more twisted, then I guess it would have been a little more of a curious situation. But somehow in some press release or whatever, Jacksonville let out the ratings on some of the players that they did not actually draft. So, and a number of these were Jets. Now, the ratings actually were good. It was a rating system that they had for the players. It wasn't just Jets players, but it was a number of Jets that came out. And I'm looking at this, and I'm saying, "Ooh, this could be really juicy." But then you look, and you're like, "Oh, well, yeah." So, and I think if you're Joe Douglas and the Jets, you're like, "It's okay, it doesn't bother me," because so they had a rating on Zach Wilson as their rating system goes from like 1 to 8, an 8 being like an all-time great, a 7 being like a perennial
Pro Bowl player,
Pro Bowler starter, 6 is like a regular starter, and working your way down. And when you look at who the Jets drafted, they took Zach Wilson. The Jags had him rated as a 7, meaning a Pro Bowler. Now they had Trevor Lawrence as an 8, Hall of Famer, perennial All Pro. But does that really surprise anybody? Like, does that surprise you?
No.
I think I'm trying to think. I don't know if any of the other quarterbacks were on the list.
I didn't see the quarterbacks. I saw the guard you guys took was on the list.
Yeah, and they had him.
Like a 6'7" or something like that.
Yeah, as a perennial starter, and
Dude,
they had him rated as the highest. Did I
smoke that thing? Smoke that thing, man! You keep having to light it up, like
it's going out on me sometimes. It happens.
What do you got, bro?
What are you gonna do?
What are you smoking?
It's a Drew Estates factory smoke. It's one of my favorites.
You love the Drew Estates, yeah.
I do. I'm a big fan. But their factory smokes are a little less expensive.
Gotcha.
And I can smoke them more often and not feel so bad
the next day
about taking food out of my children's mouths. So,
especially if they want a snow cone, Christ.
No, we got ice at home. Put some strawberry syrup on it.
Put some food coloring on it and shut up.
My kids don't even ask anymore. They're like, Daddy, can we? No. Can we go home? Yes, that we could do.
So cool.
That's such a hard father. My father gave me everything too, and here I am. No, everywhere.
My father's the nicest guy on the planet, and you're Scrooge.
Horrible. I'm just a bad person. Anyway, Elijah Moore was somebody else that came out, and they had him like a 7.2.
Yes.
And he falls to the Jets, and the Jets get him, second round. I still think a second round steal. I mentioned to you, I didn't necessarily have him as someone the Jets needed, but we talked about him in one of our pre-draft shows as someone to keep an eye on. And I just look and I say, we're on par with Urban Meyer and his crew as far as how we rate our players, right? I mean, come on, that's got to say something. Don't you think?
It's definitely a nice pat on the back, but we don't know Urban Meyer in the NFL yet either. So that's
a good point.
Let's calm down.
Well, he's done some curious things already, wouldn't you say?
That he has.
A couple of things that we might be like, I don't know if I want to be compared to Urban Meyer just yet. Hiring what could be allegedly is a racist-ish kind of
strength and
conditioning coach. Hiring, signing Tim Tebow, which sorry, I got Ash. I'm having a hard time here. Signing Tim Tebow. Well, nepotist, I don't know.
Taking Travis Etienne, they thought that was a question mark there. Put him a wide receiver.
I was just going to say, you could take Travis Etienne, but then when you get to practice, he's your wide receiver. All right, Urban. What do you –
Maybe he's not feeling good again.
Maybe we've been picking on the wrong coaches. At least who's the coach at Detroit, that lunatic?
Oh, Dan Campbell. Dude, I saw
at least he's got guys in their natural positions, right? He's not telling a guard, hey, man, we're going to make you play tackle.
Yeah, we're making free safety.
I'll play tight end. Yeah.
Dude, he had a shirt on today. Knee biter or something like that at practice. Dude, he's all in, man. I'll tell you that much.
The funny thing about him is I could give two shits about the Detroit Lions, of course. Who cares?
Yeah. Same.
But I'm kind of rooting for him just to shove it up everyone's ass. Sure. Everyone who's this guy's an idiot. He can't coach. Why did they hire him?
Yeah, this isn't 1976. You can't coach like that anymore. Well, let's see.
Listen, maybe you're right, maybe you're wrong. You know what? The funny thing is, I think Bill Belichick has shown you can coach like that if those are the type of players that you bring in.
Right.
Could Aaron Rodgers play for Bill Belichick? Oh, I'm going to say no.
Yeah, I'm going to say no.
You're a freaking baby, Yeah. I don't know that Aaron Rodgers could play for a number of coaches that are in the NFL right now. Now, I know those coaches will all tell you they could coach Aaron Rodgers, but I don't know that that's true. So it came out. What a nice segue here. It came out yesterday. Green Bay had the start of their OTAs, which are optional practices, and although you get paid if you go to 70% of them, if you show up for 70% of them, you do get paid for that.
Like 500,000 or so. Is that too much money or something?
Maybe I don't know if it depends on your actual salary or not.
Probably. Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know.
And it was okay, so Aaron Rodgers not going to show up. We kind of expected that. But what was not expected was 5 of his kind of, we'll say, weapons, wide receivers, tight ends, running backs. They did not show up also. No, I don't think anything was said, but it does seem like a little sign of solidarity. Would you say that?
Well, for Aaron's corner, you mean?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
it ain't for Gutekunst or whatever.
I would be pissed if I was the Packers coaching staff, because if they do end up trading Aaron or whatever they're going to do, you want to have some camaraderie with Love or whatever's going on with these guys there. I know it's only OTAs and it is off season, like voluntary. I get it, but everything helps. Every little bit helps.
Yeah, I even look at it even differently. Like I look and I say, again, we don't even really know, because Aaron Rodgers has never actually used his own words to say what his beef is. Like even when he talked the other night on ESPN,
I was going to bring that up. What a joke!
Culture, environment. These are people. But what are you talking about? Like, what's your beef? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So without really knowing what his problem is, if you're one of those guys who just sat out, like quote unquote, in solidarity for Aaron Rodgers, he's talking about you when he says, I don't have any weapons. He's talking about you. He doesn't consider you enough. Doesn't that bother you a little bit? And then the other side of that is, let's say Aaron does get traded or he does retire. Like if, let's say Green Bay holds their ground and he retires, you're stuck without him. Are you going to retire? Are you going to be happy with Jordan Love as your starter? Are you going to be happy winning 8, 9, 10 games? Devontae Adams, Aaron Jones, are you guys going to be okay with that? Like you're standing in solidarity right now with the guy who's going to cost you a potential Super Bowl season.
Yeah.
Like, but the other side of it is, if you don't, are you pissing off the breadwinner?
And throw you out with the trash. Unless he had some kind of conversation with these guys and said, listen, he can't talk about that way about Jones and Adams, but the other guys, definitely.
But he doesn't talk at all. This is the problem.
I'm standing behind closed doors, because they've got to be talking behind closed doors.
I don't know that.
I would imagine so.
I would hope so, and I would think so, but I don't know that.
Yeah, again, I don't know.
Even everybody, we got all these people. We got ESPN, we got Fox Sports, we got all these guys. No matter where you listen, they're all talking about, oh, this is what Aaron wants, and this is what he's pissed about. You don't know that because you haven't heard shit from the actual man.
Right.
You heard these weird, cryptic, vibes of like, oh, it's about culture, it's about people, it's about this. Well, what do you mean? What's your problem? What are you upset about? Because he even said in that ESPN thing, like, it ain't about Jordan Love. He likes Jordan Love.
Yeah.
Well, then what is it, dude? Because it seems to me you went to the NFC Championship game back-to-back, and you're kind of primed to do it again. You have a top 5 wide receiver. You have a top 10 tight end. You have a top 5 running back. You have a top 5 offensive line. You have a top 10 defense. What the hell? You have a bright, young, energetic, innovative coach. What do you want? Like, what is it that you want? You want what Tom Brady has? Tom Brady's got 7 rings and makes $12 million this season. You got 1 ring and make 39.
30, right.
Like, what is it that your problem is, dude? I just – at this point, I'm almost not even like saying shut up. I'm actually saying speak up. Tell us what the beef is. Tell us what your problem is so that like people can take a side, because otherwise it just looks like you're being a baby. Cowherd was on today.
Oh, good.
And he said yesterday he listened to some local Green Bay talk radio. 100% of the callers that called in were against Rodgers. Why? Because they don't understand.
Yeah.
Because you haven't said anything. It ain't for Colin Cowherd to assume your problem. It's not for ESPN, Stephen A. Smith, Mike Greenberg, any of these guys to assume what your problem is. Especially when you come out the other night and say, it ain't Jordan Love. That's not the problem. I like the kid. He's a good kid. Like, well, then what is it? Just saying culture.
And he also said he likes his staff. He goes, I love our staff. I love our players.
I like a staff that goes back-to-back NFC Championship games too.
Yeah.
Well, so what is your problem? You need to be a little bit more specific. It's like if you say like, we're spending too much money and we need to cut some things out. Okay, what do you want to cut out? Well, I'm not sure. Well, I mean, you need to be a little bit more specific, as to what it is you want to eliminate, or else it's just words. It doesn't mean anything. So I just. you got to say something, dude. You got to be a little bit more specific. Now, again, I say this all the time. We don't know what's going on. I don't know if maybe Aaron Rodgers is actually doing the right thing here, and he's not saying things public, but he is talking to LaFleur and Gutekunst and Murphy behind closed doors, and everybody's just hush-hush about it other than to say, we want Aaron here. Maybe that is going on. Frankly, I hope that's what's going on. But Murphy came out, the president of the team came out today and said, I'm not firing anybody. I'm not firing my GM. I'm not going to be held – basically said I'm not going to be held hostage by, yes, the best player on our team, the most important player on our team. I'm not going to be held hostage, and you're not going to dictate how we run the entire organization. And I got to be honest with you, I kind of like that. Because
me too.
It's easy to sit here and say you should listen to your stars and you should listen, bring in what they want. What if they're wrong? We have no problem pointing out when a GM, signs a guy to a big contract and that player, doesn't get it done. We're like, oh, it was a terrible signing. It was a terrible draft pick. Are you going to hold Aaron Rodgers accountable if he wants to bring somebody in and that guy sucks? Do we hold Tom Brady accountable for the fact that outside of obviously nice catches in the Super Bowl, Antonio Brown didn't do shit for Tampa Bay last year. He wasn't a factor.
Right.
He was a factor in the Super Bowl. Don't get me wrong, but he wasn't a factor last year. Do we hold Tom Brady accountable for that? Is that wasted money? Like, do we assume other guys couldn't have made catches? Like, you're going to hold Aaron Rodgers accountable? I don't think so. What if he's wrong? Just like anybody else could be wrong. So, it just.
I know.
I hope they hold firm.
Yeah, me too.
Hey, you know what? Before Josh joins us, let's go over AFC East. Let's start with the AFC East, okay? See if we can get this in before he joins us here.
Yeah.
Buffalo Bills. Some interesting signings. The biggest one, of course, Emmanuel Sanders. This is big because now you can't – now, while he's not like a burner anymore, he's not like a high flyer. He's experienced, very good receiver. And now you can't just focus 100% on Diggs. Like, you'll have a professional receiver alongside of him. But outside of that, they were pretty quiet this offseason, wouldn't you say?
Very quiet. They beefed up the O-line a little bit. Just lately, they got some guys in camp. Build on that 2020 championship game. They were 13-3 last year. They got 4 primetime games this year. They're going to play the Jets national TV for you twice.
One of the biggest problems they had last year, one of the biggest problems they had last year is they weren't getting to the quarterback enough. Yeah. Their defense was solid, but they didn't get pressure on quarterback. And they did draft Rousseau from Miami. Yep. Another kid, Boogie Basham, I think he's from Vanderbilt, if I'm not mistaken. So they did kind of address that in the draft. I'm always reluctant to say, well, these, rookie draft picks are going to have a big impact. It's possible, but
it's a question mark.
Time. Yeah, these things take time.
They have a great secondary too, so a pass rush would be used for them.
But to me, I'm just looking at this team and I'm saying, Josh Allen took a big step last year. If you're saying that, your next step is to make it to the Super Bowl because you went to the AFC Championship game last year, then it seems to me you're really banking on Josh Allen getting even better.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you're
absolutely.
saying we don't have to change a lot. Well, do you think – he was like an MVP candidate last year. Do you think he can get that much better?
Well, if he stays as well as he did last year, I think you're fine. I think you just need more help defensively. You need a run game. The run game was shit all year.
This is that was a major problem.
And you don't want him to be the running back. Well, that's what I'm saying. You don't want him to be the run. That's a mistake right there. So if they get not Zach Morris, fucking Saved by the Bell. What's his name? Moses? I can't think of his name. From Utah last year. Something Moses.
I'm not sure.
Moses. Yeah, so if they get him going, you don't have to run Allen as much. And like you said, Manny and Diggs, and they got a couple other guys up there. Gabriel Davis was good down the stretch. So, and let's be honest, the division's still not great. So,
well, the division we're talking about here, it's interesting. There are, to me, there are 2 other teams with Miami and the Patriots that we have major question marks on.
Yeah, they're fighting for second.
As I was doing the analysis for this, they're absolutely fighting for second. Don't get me wrong, but I'm just saying, like, I don't know. I really had a hard time telling you what I think about those teams because they are, vastly different than they were last year, especially the Patriots. I don't know what that means. So we'll get into them in a minute. How about the schedule for the Bills? I looked at the first 5 games. Home against the Steelers, at
That's
Miami.
A great one.
Yeah. Well, is it? I don't know. Like, is it? Are we getting the Steelers from the first 11 games of the season? Well, or are we getting the Steelers?
But I think to start the year, they should be healthy and fresh. At least you're going to get that. I don't know how talented they're going to be or how banged up Ben's going to be, but defensively, they should be pretty good.
There's been times in the past that people counted Ben out, and then he came back strong the following year. Yeah, I'm expecting him to come into camp in pretty good shape, ready to go, wanting to prove people wrong. So I agree with you. It's at home, but that'll be a fascinating game. Then it's on the road at Miami, back at home against Washington, which will be a physical football game.
Yeah, definitely.
Then they got what I'm going to say is a pretty easy one at home against Houston, and then they're on the road at Kansas City.
Yep. And at Kansas City, at Tennessee, back-to-back.
Yeah, tough ones. Although Tennessee is another one that we're going to have to get to in another week that, I don't know, they had a strange offseason. So I don't know. That's a other than the Houston game, it's a pretty difficult start to the season.
Yeah,
like there's no other than Houston, there's no gimmies. And I could see them being anywhere from 1-4 to 4-1. I mean, to be totally honest, I think those are a lot of tough games, but they're a very good team. So 3-2 wouldn't surprise me. 2-3 wouldn't surprise me. I'd be surprised if it was 1-4. I'd be surprised if it was 4-1 also.
I probably would agree with that.
But 3-2, they should hope for 3-2, settle for 2-3, be very upset with 1-4. So that's my feeling on the Bills. I don't know that I still, as I think about them, as I look at them and how they're constructed, I still don't know that they're a Super Bowl contender. I don't know that they're a Super Bowl team.
I probably would agree with that.
I think what you're asking out of Josh Allen, if you're asking him to improve over what you saw last year, which was, pretty good, I think it's a big ask. I don't know. I think it's a big ask to ask that much more out of him. That defense has to improve. What we saw them do against Kansas City,
they need more.
Defense is going to have to improve.
They need more, yeah.
So the next team we have here, Miami Dolphins. The next team that I have listed, Miami Dolphins. They added Will Fuller, which on paper is an absolutely beautiful signing. The guy's a burner, below the top off of coverages. He's very explosive. In reality, in the real world, the fact is he gets injured. Very rarely does he play an entire season. He's an expensive player, although you have a quarterback who's on a rookie contract. You can kind of afford a player like that right now. But their draft was very nice. I mean, I have to say their draft was nice, and they drafted type of players that could be immediately impactful. Obviously, Jalen Waddle right off the top. We mentioned that Jacksonville those ratings that were those player ratings that were released, they had Waddle as an 8, like Jalen Waddle as an 8. So Jalen Waddle is an instant impact, explosive, Tyreek Hill type of player.
Yeah, they got him a familiar face. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
So it looks like right now it's going to be the Tua show 100%. But they got a good backup in Jacoby Brissett in case something goes wrong. He's not. I don't think he could win as many games as Fitzpatrick did last year, but he could save you or help you if something happens to Tua.
Oh, for sure. No, he's a pro. He's a pro. Yeah. He can settle things down. Their defense was very good last year. If they were missing anything, it was pass rush, and they drafted Jalen Phillips. Now, we mentioned Jalen Phillips. Chris Sims thinks that Jalen Phillips is one of the top 3 picks in this past draft, if he didn't have those concussion issues.
Yeah, I know.
So if he had a clean bill of health, he might have been top 2-3 players in this draft. And I think they got him later in the first round. Yeah. So that could, if he's healthy, that could be a steal, and he could be a pass rush force right away. Again, I'm reluctant to put that kind of pressure on rookies right off the bat, but the potential's there. And if nothing else, he doesn't necessarily have to be a 12-sack guy. If he's just someone that puts pressure on quarterbacks, it's really not something they had a lot of last year. It could be a big difference. And then finally, I think it was a left tackle, Eichenberg. I don't know if he's going to play left tackle for them. They might move him to the right side, but he'll play tackle. Eichenberg from Notre Dame. Am I correct?
Yep.
Yeah. Another one who
a big guy, man. Good. Yeah.
Instant plug and play. He's an instant starter. Good draft.
Liam, I think. Nice little Irishman. Yeah.
So the question is, it's the same question we have for many teams, and is Tua your starter? Is Tua your starter? And interestingly enough, they play 17 games now. It'll be very interesting 8-9 games into the season. What if you're like, 3-5, 3-6, and Tua's averaging like 170 yards per game kind of thing? Are you already bailing on this guy? And if so, now what? Because you've, in a very short amount of time, I have to give this front office credit, man. It was only 2 years ago that this was. Remember, it was tank for Tua.
Yep.
They were supposed to be really bad, and now just a year and a half, 2 years later, they're a legitimate football team. They were one game away from being a playoff team last year.
Absolutely.
If Tua's not your guy, it's like, now what? I mean, it's really pretty crazy. And then it begs the question, if Deshaun Watson kind of clears his name.
I was just going to bring that up. Yeah.
Does it then become more imminent, that you try to make that move? So it'll be interesting.
Or did they miss their window on it? If he gets cleared and whatever.
The problem is, 2 is a little more enticing right now. If you start off 2-5, 3-6, it's like, well, your quarterback sucks. We don't want him. Well,
I was looking from the other way. Him. I was looking at it from Houston's way too. Like,
here's what I'm saying. If you're Houston, you're like, well, I don't want that guy. He kind of showed him. The reason you're coming after Watson is because your guy's shown himself to suck, and now we don't want him. Now it's like, and now that trade doesn't look as good until after the season because they're going to want to see that that's a higher draft pick so that they can go get a quarterback. So You're right. They might have missed their window. My sense is they believe in Tua, or at least, they obviously enough.
At least they're keeping their fingers crossed.
Enough to put some pieces around them. Let's look at their schedule. At the Patriots, they open up at the Patriots. Then they're home against the Bills.
Oh.
Yeah. Home against the Bills. Then they're at the Raiders, home against the Colts, at Tampa. I'm not going to lie, dude. That's a hellacious.
That's 1-4.
Very easily, right?
Wow.
Very easily. And what are you giving them a win as? At Raiders?
I was going to go Matt New England, to be honest with you.
That's a tough game.
I know.
That's a tough game.
Goodness
Bill Belichick against Tua.
And I tell you, at Jacksonville, week 6 isn't that easy because there's such a question mark. We don't know what they're going to do.
It's that's a tough open for them, dude. There's no easy games because even the Raiders, you have to go out to Vegas. It'll be the first time, not the first game for the Raiders, but like we're gonna have fans in the seats. It'll be a full stadium out in Vegas. So that might be the Raiders' second home game of the season. Maybe it's their first. I don't know what their first 2 games are.
No, they open up with Baltimore at home. That's gonna be great.
Right. So, like, you're talking Raiders' second home game ever in this new stadium. That place is going to be rocking.
Yeah.
Beautiful weather. 5'11" quarterback. That's not a win. That's not a guaranteed win. Like, you could easily see them starting off 0-5.
You could.
So, that's, the schedule matters. Now, you go 1-4, 0-5 to start the season, and it's like, you're not making playoffs. And then the major questions arise. That's why I say, like, at that point, are you like, Tua's not the guy? And then it's like, well, now what? Jacoby Brissett, your guy? Like, that's a hell of a thing. Patriots. They did the most unpatriotic? I don't think that fits. The most non-patriot thing this offseason and spent a shit ton of money. They spent more than anybody else in the NFL. I don't know if that's just because Belichick is getting older and doesn't have the time to rebuild an entire organization from scratch.
Good point. That's good.
Or if they're looking at the rest of the division and saying this is a division that can be, taken over in the next year or two. Jonnu Smith, Hunter Henry, Nelson Aguilar, who I do not think that was a good signing, but whatever. They did lose Joe Thuney, which I think is nothing to sneeze at. The guy's probably the best guard in the league.
I agree.
And you lost them. That matters, especially when you drafted a relatively stationary quarterback like Mac Jones. They drafted Christian Barmore, defensive tackle out of Bama, which is like just typical Patriots draft pick.
Well, they re-signed Cam, right? Cam's going to be the guy to start, and then do they want Mac Jones to sit the whole year?
Cam?
No, zero. No, I have zero faith in Cam. At least early, maybe a little bit more than I would have later because he's going to get his ass kicked again. But
it's funny to me when people are like, "Well, Cam, one more year in the system, he won't have COVID." He's got weapons this year, and I'm like, I get the whole didn't have weapons last year though, but if you watched any New England games, when he throws a 5-yard out into the dirt, that has nothing to do with the weapon. Okay, that has nothing to do with the type of player, the quality of the player he was throwing to. Cam is not a great passer. He's a pretty damn good passer when throwing the ball downfield. Yeah, I will give him that. Like, he's a pretty good downfield passer. But like on those timing throws, accuracy throws, quick outs and stuff like that, I just don't see Cam. And he's not going to become a better runner. He's either going to be the same or less. Like, he's getting older.
Yeah. You don't think they're a landing spot for Julio Jones? They don't have the money to pull that off, right?
Well, there's listen, you can always move money around. We talked about that. We did learn that a team can eat. You can force a team to eat some of the salary. So if you can get Atlanta to eat, say, $5 million, and now you got to pay Julio Jones $10 million. I think they probably could pull that off, because I don't think they had a shitload of money that they were capable, under the cap this year.
Right.
They did not use all of it, although they use a lot of it. And frankly, you can make that room. I'm of the mind that I don't see a lot of teams running to make a move for Julio Jones. And I think the reason is you're not sure what's left in the tank, number one. He's expensive, number two, and he's not on the field every week, number three. I heard a report earlier this week that for the last 2 seasons, the guy barely ever practices. It's not because he's lazy or he's
banged up.
He's banged up all the time, and he's a gamer, and he shows up on most game days. He played 15 games 2 years ago. This past season, he only played, 8? Yeah, 52 catches.
It might have been
8 or 9. Yeah. Maybe it was 9 games.
Yeah, no, I think you're
52 catches. I'm not signing up for that.
Because listen, him and AJ Green came in the same year. Look where Green's career, injury, and then is Julio the same way? We'll find out. And I don't want to give up a first-round pick or anything more than I have to for that. So.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. So let's look at their schedule real quick. By the way, they drafted what's his name? Cameron McGrone, linebacker from Michigan.
Yes, sir.
Is he any good?
He's fast. He's a little undersized. And I thought he should have stayed another year in Michigan, but we'll see. And he got hurt early last year. Okay. So he's coming off a knee or an ankle injury too. So
here's their schedule. They opened up with the Dolphins at home, then they're at the Jets, home against New Orleans, home against Tampa, at Houston. Now, we don't know. We mentioned that we don't know about the Dolphins. We don't know what they're going to be, although we kind of suspect, they were a 10-win team last year. They should be there. They should be okay. Jets should be bad. In my opinion.
We don't know about the Saints.
In my opinion, I'm thinking the Saints are going to be down. They do, there's no Drew Brees. They're going to be down. They should win that game at home. Tampa's going to be really tough, although that place is going to be rocking with Tom Brady.
That's going to be a fun night. That's going to be a fun. Yeah, that's going to be fun. Yeah.
And then you should have a win against Houston. I can see them getting off to a 4-1 start. I can absolutely see them getting off to a 4-1
comes
start.
In. Dallas is a question mark after that too. Like, that'll be a fun game,
Yeah.
But I know.
So I can see that. Listen, we're going to get back to finishing AFC East in a couple minutes, maybe more than a few minutes. Yeah, we're going to save the best for last.
Yeah,
the New York Jets.
I want to let you go on that one. That's a good call, I think.
Maybe we should just eliminate that segment.
Or we just end it with that.
But right now, we're going to be joined by Josh Hennig of ESPN Radio 97.3 South Jersey. Josh, what's going on, man? Thanks for joining us.
No problem. How you guys doing?
Doing okay. We had a bunch of questions for you about a number of different things. We'll start with some Eagles stuff. And I have to ask, are you at this point comfortable with analyzing potential draft choices by playing hand games such as rock, paper, scissors, or maybe tiddlywinks, or games of checkers or chess? How do you feel about that?
Well, here's the problem. I feel a little bit more comfortable about it than sports science, because sports science told Chip Kelly to draft Marcus Smith and Nelson Aguilar. So at least we're not there. If rock, paper, scissors means you draft the Heisman Trophy winner, it can't be all bad, right? I think that's kind of where I stand on. I think a lot of people – here's the problem. A lot of people read a lot into that rock, paper, scissors. They didn't neglect the whole quote. The whole quote was Sirianni, first of all, was handed the question by Roseman. The original question was about evaluation of talent. And Roseman said, oh, well, Nick can handle that question. First of all, that should tell you that Roseman is deferring to Sirianni on things, which in and of itself is a good thing. Second of all, Sirianni's whole point was he wants competition. He wants competitors. He doesn't want jobs handed to them. And if I remember correctly, didn't we have Travis Fulgham play great for 5 weeks? And then Doug Peterson was like, yeah, but I like Alshon Jeffrey, so I'm going to put Jeffrey in the lineup. Now, if you had a coach who cared about competition, he'd be like, Alshon, we appreciate you, but we can't put this kid on the bench. So in the big picture, I'm okay if rock, paper, scissors gets you a more competitive football team.
Go ahead, Scott.
Josh, so you have more confidence in Nick Sirianni than I do. That press conference was alarming.
Well, which one?
Well, the first one or the
second one? Which one are we talking about? There's been a lot of them.
Well, to my point, does this guy have a clue? And to piggyback off that, is there going to be any patience with Hurts? Because it's going to be a long year. Do they think he's the guy going forward, or if they're 2-15 or 3-14, do you move on?
Okay, so there's two different things. First of all, I'm going to address the Hurts part first because I think that's, to me, the most interesting conversation. Because at the end of the day, the coach may be one person at a press conference and another person with the players.
Sure.
If anybody saw the video of Sirianni from a couple of years ago from NFL Films, I mean, he's walking around the practice field, dropping F-bombs, talking, just shooting it up with the players, talking about technique. So if we get that guy, you're fine. If you get the guy who was handed a pile of horse manure by Jeffrey Lurie in the first press conference because Lurie wanted to go on a 15-minute diatribe and then leave his new head coach to stand by himself in a room with a camera, with a Zoom screen, and try to answer questions, then you might have a problem. Now, here's the thing with Hurts. You better be patient with him because name every quarterback in Eagles history over the last 20 years. What did this team do? Give them not one, not two, not three, not four, how many chances were all these quarterbacks given? Carson Wentz was the worst statistical quarterback in the league last year. They didn't bench him until near the end of the season. Yeah. How many chances did they give to Kevin Cobb, Sam Bradford, Nick Foles? Yeah. He's been here twice already. How many chances did we give to A.J. Feely, Coy Detmer? I feel like there's a history of this franchise giving multiple chances to quarterbacks. So if you're not patient with Jalen Hurts now, after just last year, Howie Roseman said, well, we passed on Russell Wilson, but I'm not going to say his name to the media, but you know who I'm talking about. And we feel like this guy is similar to him. So if in some reality you think that he is anywhere close to Russell Wilson, you better be patient with him because Peyton Manning did lead the league in interceptions his rookie year.
Sure.
So you make a great point about that first press conference with Sirianni. I think I felt like it was just so unfair because, in a normal press conference when a coach gets hired, there's press there. There's a room filled with people and there's kind of a vibe and there's an energy. And there's clearly, as a teacher myself, and I'm teaching to students on Zoom, it's a friggin' joke. It's impossible to get any kind of energy. So I think it was totally unfair. So are you kind of telling us that the Nick Sirianni that is going to be the head coach and we'll see as the head coach of the Eagles is more like the guy we saw in the second press conference? I'm not talking about the rock, paper, scissors stuff. He was energetic. He was talking. He looked like a guy that he didn't want to be sitting there. He wanted to stand and talk. Like, is that more of what you think we're going to see as the coach of the Eagles?
I think it's the second and the third press conference because no one was talking about the third press conference where he starts talking about how it's about fundamentals and technique, where he's talking about, we want to have matchups. We want to win matchups. This offense is about setting guys up. The second press conference talks about what an X receiver is. I think that's who Sirianni is. I can't promise you he's going to win you a Super Bowl like Doug Peterson did. But what I can promise you is this guy's a football lifer. This guy was a coach. He's played his whole life. He's coached his whole life. All he knows is football. And honestly, I'm okay if your obsession is football instead of your obsession being like Chip Kelly's sports science. And I keep referring to Chip because there's a part of me that wonders if Doug Peterson was an anomaly because of the fact there were so many things that had to go right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it just kind of happened that, for example, he didn't hire Jim Schwartz. He was handed Jim Schwartz. Or, for example, how they just happened to get 2 former Patriots in the offseason, Chris Long and LeGarrette Blount. How his former buddy, Howie Roseman's former buddy, Mike Tannenbaum, just gave him Jay Ajayi before the trade deadline. And how they just happened to get home field advantage. It just felt like you had to wonder, Doug Peterson got to the postseason for 3 straight years, but is that really like a tangible example? So to me, I can't really compare Sirianni to Peterson too much, but I know for sure that I hated and I despised the condescending schmuck that was Chip Kelly.
I don't think you're alone in that area.
Yeah, I don't think you're alone in this room, to be honest with you.
Not a particularly likable guy. That is for certain. Now, the funny thing is, if you're Bill Belichick, you're not a particularly likable guy. But if you got 6 Super Bowl rings, people will put up with a lot of shit, but they're not going to put up with it.
But there's one thing with Belichick. You got to remember, his players like him. Kelly's players hated him. Before he was even fired, Lane Johnson was talking crap on the head coach.
Yeah,
so
it's one thing when the people outside the cameras don't like you. When the people in the building don't like you, you probably have a problem.
Exactly.
So obviously the Eagles finished off the season poorly last year, and all the predictions everywhere are that it's going to be a really rough season for them next year. I look at the beginning of their schedule, and the first 4 or 5 games are tough, but I also look and say Sirianni's a former wide receivers coach, and one of the biggest problems on his team was wide receivers, and they weren't maybe playing up to their potential. Tons of injuries. Is this team, if healthy, can they make some noise, or are they kind of as bad? I mean, when you let go or trade Carson Wentz and you eat that kind of salary cap for a season, it's going to cause holes. That's money that can't be used. But if they're healthy, can they make some noise this year?
If healthy, this is an 8-win team, in my opinion, at least.
Okay.
Because
so that means they're pulling off some upsets here or there. They're not just rolling over. They're gonna be a problem.
Because the stretch of their schedule from I think it's week 2 to 7 is really where things get like really equal. But once you get past that point,
oh yeah, you're right, Josh. Wow.
The schedule after week 7 is a lot more manageable in retrospect. Well, not retrospect, in a preview looking ahead. So I have to wonder for this team. So if Lane Johnson's healthy, all-pro right tackle, if Brandon Brooks is healthy, which Brandon Brooks looks like he's an Adonis right now. I mean, that dude is shredded right now. I don't think I've ever seen a guard look as good as he does with his shirt off in my life. But, so he's on the field practicing right now. Jason Kelce, we know what he is. I want to see him a lot. I'd be the left tackle. Personally, I think that kid's a stud. And I think if that's what he did after not playing football in his life before a couple of years ago, what can he do with a full offseason and being prepared for that job? I think if the offensive line is good, this team can compete because at the end of the day, it's not sexy, but championships and games are won in the trenches.
I totally agree. We talk about it all the time.
Yeah. So if the Eagles' offensive and defensive line are healthy, then I'm not as worried about Hurts. I'm not as worried about the coach because that kind of like compensates for certain things.
Yeah. I mentioned this exact thing to Scotty when we did the NFC East last week. I said, don't be so quick to count out the Eagles. It's a rough schedule at first, but if their offensive line is healthy, you have a mobile quarterback that can make plays and generate excitement. Don't be so quick to count them out. Don't be so quick. I have 2 more football questions before we get to the Sixers non-Eagles questions. Number 1, we talked about this maybe a month ago. John Gruden is in the middle of a 10-year contract and has shown, I'll say the Raiders have not shown much in improvement or I don't know how bright the future looks. You're in a division with Mahomes and now with Herbert. If you're the Raiders front office, is there a point in a 10-year contract when you're like, Jesus, do we actually have to start thinking about how the hell to get out of this thing?
So a couple things there. One, let's remember that Gruden was hired before Mayock.
Correct.
So the guy who's running the front office, quote unquote, Mike Mayock, was hired after the head coach. So what you're already
But we know Gruden has a lot of say.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got $100 million.
That wasn't an
contract.
accident.
He's got a ton of say.
Right.
Yeah.
So we already know that Gruden has a lot to say. We know he's basically they're almost marketing him. If you ever watch any Raiders ads out there in Vegas right now, they market Gruden more than the players.
Oh, it's totally true.
which in and of itself is hilarious because what you're basically saying is come to Raiders games for Chucky. Don't worry about the team. So that in and of itself,
come to our games for the coach. Maybe we'll win.
Right.
It's like,
so,
okay.
So, and remember, you're in Vegas now. So at least the first couple of years, by the way, they just announced this week they're going to have fans in Vegas.
Right.
Vegas was the last stadium to say they're going to have fans there, which makes no sense to me because the Vegas Strip has been open, maskless, and free reign for about a month now. But whatever. Fine.
How about it's been free reign for 30 years? You can get laid in Las Vegas for the right price. I mean, legally. So
that's a different conversation.
Yeah.
But the point is that so you're in Vegas, right? You're not the Golden Knights. You're not the Vegas Strip. You're the Raiders. So people aren't really coming for the Raiders. They're coming for the fact that you have a DJ in the building and that they're going to sell 60% of the crowd to the out-of-towners. So at the end of the day, does Mark Davis really care right now about the team as much as he cares about making back the money he had to pay to move the team from Oakland to Vegas? And that's kind of where I'm at with Gruden. To me, I think we forget about the business side of sports at times, that these people are businessmen. And Mark Davis is literally, it sounds oxymoronic to say this, is the poorest owner in the NFL. He has the least wealth, the least capital. He has the least everything. So if he looks at Gruden and says, I just need to sell tickets and make money for a couple of years to stabilize this thing, then you know what? It doesn't matter who the quarterback is. It doesn't matter that the offensive line, that we don't even understand what they're doing with the offensive line. It doesn't matter that Mike Mayock every year drafts the guy about 2 rounds ahead of where he should. What happens is that, hey, are we selling tickets? Because we got to pay that $700 million budget we had to make to move this team here, and that's why we hired a DJ.
Okay, last football question. I'll leave this as wide open and take it wherever you want to go. Your feelings on Aaron Rodgers, that situation.
I think Aaron Rodgers is proving that he is an individual who is just thinks that he's been disrespected his whole life. He thinks that he should have been drafted ahead of Alex Smith. He thinks that he should have been starting all along. He thinks that he should have won more Super Bowls. He thinks Mike McCarthy was a waste of time. He thinks that Brian Gutekunst is a waste of time. I mean, you saw that Kenny Mayne interview. I mean, he named everybody in the organization except the front office. And because the Packers are the only NFL team with no real owner, there's nobody to tell the front office, you suck. So as far as Rodgers is concerned, I think that until someone proves to him that they respect him, he's going to be at odds with them. And I have to wonder if we will ever see him play in a Packers uniform ever again until these idiots in the front office like Mark Murphy and Brian Gutekunst actually realize that they've basically told their quarterback, who is a future Hall of Famer, league MVP, has the greatest touchdown interception ratio of any quarterback in NFL history, you're not important. I mean, that's
well, let me ask you this, just to push back on that a little bit. You have a top 5 wide receiver. You have probably a top 10 tight end. You have a top 5 running back. You have at least a top 10 offensive line and a top 10 defense. You've been in an NFC championship game 2 years in a row. You probably should have won it this year after Tom Brady throws 3 straight interceptions.
Right.
You make $39 million this year. I'm curious, is like, what else are they supposed to do?
Well, the first thing they should do is have a conversation about the things that you just said. So that top tier receiver, Devontae Adams, is he a top receiver without Aaron Rodgers?
I'm with you. I've said this about receivers that come out of New Orleans. When they leave New Orleans and Drew Brees, suddenly they're kind of average.
Right.
But that's what elite quarterbacks are supposed to do, right? You make B or B plus receivers, you turn them into A and A plus receivers.
So, for example, now that being said, we know Julio Jones is going to be in Atlanta anymore. What if the Packers go out and get Julio Jones? Wouldn't that be a message to your quarterback that, listen, we're going to win with you right now. And if you want to leave after this year, that's fine. But we have you on the books for, as you said, $39 million. So if we hand you Julio Jones, are you happy? Yes or no?
Then you also have to ask him, because he wants to play, amateur general manager, who are we cutting? Because we got to find $10 million to pay at least $10 million. That's assuming that Atlanta will eat $5 million of the $15 million that's owed to Jones. Who are we cutting to get that $10 million? These are questions. These are real questions that have to be answered to bring these kinds of players in. This is the only pushback I ever give. It's a hard cap. There's no questions about where you have an exact amount that you can spend. And, you want to be like Tom Brady, but Tom Brady's going to be, on the books for $9 million for Tampa this year. That's why they were able to sign everybody. So if you want to take $30 million off your contract, we'll bring in Julio Jones. I'll bring in a couple other guys too.
Well, how about this point? Rodgers and the GM admitted that nobody has talked about reworking his contract. Howie Roseman reworked 30 contracts this offseason.
Yeah.
The Packers reworked 5.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, maybe there's a point where the GM needs to go find his Howie Roseman and rework some contracts or something, because for some reason nobody's called Rodgers about saying, hey, can we lower that cap number and push it on the road?
Yeah, we assume that no one did.
Well, at least the GM says he didn't. So.
Oh, okay. Well, hey, if those are his words, then I would take him at that. Let's talk some 76ers. Has there been a more disrespected number 1 seed in NBA history? You hear people talking about the Lakers. You hear people talk about the Nets. I hear people talking in the East about the Bucks. You maybe hear some talk, although, they got some injuries with Utah. You don't hear people talking about the Sixers. They're a number 1 seed. They have maybe right now the most unstoppable player in the NBA with Embiid. Are they a championship team?
They're a championship team, but I also hear what you're saying about them being disrespected. I'm not sold on the Nets yet, because I'm not convinced that 2 superstars who have had soft tissue injuries this year, in Durant and Harden, are going to survive an entire postseason without injuring themselves, number 1. Number 2, Kyrie Irving decides at random points in time that he doesn't want to play basketball, even though it's being played tens of millions of dollars. So
once a month, he has to go on a sabbatical.
So how do I know that game 3 of your conference finals, that Kyrie Irving decides that the world is burning around me, I need to go take a break, and then Durant pulls his hamstring again? And by the way, Steve Nash has as much playoff coaching experience as the 3 of us.
So, has he even actually coached the Nets this year, or has he just kind of stood on the sidelines with his arms crossed and nodded a few times?
No, his big job is he talks to all the players who are not named Harden, Durant, Griffin, Kyrie. He talks to everybody else, and he lets the other coaches handle the players. Because remember who's on his bench. His old coach, Mike D'Antoni, is just hanging around collecting a paycheck. Don't forget.
He doesn't want to talk flat Earth philosophy with Kyrie Irving.
No,
can't imagine.
Hey, the Steve Nash move like this reminds me of my high school football coach. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, wait, that guy knew what he was doing.
Oh. Josh, to piggyback on the Sixers, is there going to be patience with this team if they don't go to the championship game? Like Doc Rivers won, they have a young team. No
patience, because Sixer fans are irrational. Okay, at the end of the day, Sixer fans, they won a game on Sunday, and nobody criticizes Ben Simmons for missing 6 free throws. They criticize him for not scoring 10 or more points. Okay.
Meanwhile, he had 15 rebounds, 15 assists, which is bananas for basically a point guard.
That's how it is down there? Holy shit.
Nobody talks about Tobias Harris carrying that team for 3 quarters.
Right.
It's all about the fact that why did Doc Rivers bring Furkan Korkmaz in the middle of the second quarter? This is the problem. The criticisms of this team are all off base. When Brett Brown was here, did they criticize Brett Brown for his coaching philosophy? No. You know what I got text messages for? I have a buddy who used to go to every Sixers game for the pandemic. He would be a couple seats ahead of where Zumoff and Ala Abdenabi called the game. He would text me, what was up with that out of bounds play? Out of bounds play? You can play for the out of bounds play? Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons combined for 12 turnovers in the game. Like, here's the thing. Kobe Bryant, before he passed away, his last detail on ESPN Plus, he spent 12 minutes on the Sixers. And in those 12 minutes, he was eviscerating them. Not the coaching, but the players.
Right.
And Kobe made a comment in there that says it's on the players to make these decisions, to make better decisions on the court. So, for as far as I'm concerned, unless the Sixers get to the conference finals this year and go 6-7 games with whoever it is, everyone's going to say, trade Ben Simmons, fire Daryl Morey, trade Tobias Harris, whatever. They're going to want anarchy because at the end of the day, there's a contingent of this fan base who looks at the process and says the process was stupid, the process was a waste, and they can't separate the process that was during Sam Hinkie, which was, 3 GMs ago, right, from what is going on right now. And at the end of the day, it is what it is. And you know what? Fan is short for fanatic.
Well, that's what I was going to add to that. Because now you're going on what? Year 7 or 6 or 7 on trust the process, top picks. That was it. The big guy, Okafor's gone.
Okafor's gone.
Noel's gone. You traded the pick away for Jason Tatum, and you only have Embiid and Simmons. And I tell you, man, I can see where the fans are getting a little impatient there too.
But why? They're the number 1 seed. They're winning. They're.
But like Josh said, if the Nets played all their games, they'd be the number 1 seed.
I know, but they're not. This is where we are. I mean, you could say that if Embiid played every game, if Simmons played every game, if LeBron and this is where they are. Like, I don't know. That just seems unfair to if, then they wouldn't be. You don't know that. I don't know that. Like, it's just that's a hell of a thing to say.
Look at the West. The Nuggets and the Suns are 1-2 or 2-1. They're getting disrespected too.
Yeah, but they're getting disrespected, and they haven't. This is like new for them to win. That's all I'm saying. So it's like
the Sixers won.
Phillies. The Sixers were in the conference finals last year.
Okay.
So I'm just saying, like, they've been a winning team now for a couple of years. Like, it's not surprising.
They're on the winning path for sure.
All right, Josh, I'm looking at Embiid, and I'm looking at the rest of the Eastern Conference and then the West, and I just say, I'm looking at this playoff landscape. Is there any team out there that you're like, you know what, they have someone that can match up with Embiid? Because I don't see it.
I don't think that person exists in the Eastern Conference, especially considering the fact that Miami's down 2-0 to the Bucks right now. Because to me, the only guy who could work Embiid is Bam Adebayo because he's an athlete and he's active. If he doesn't have to deal with Bam, nobody's stopping him. The problem is that when you look at the Eastern Conference, just based on what you guys were saying, who in the Eastern Conference has a resume? There's one team. It's not the Sixers. No. It's not the Nets. It's not the Bucks. It's definitely not the Knicks. It's not the Hawks. And as we know, it's not the Celtics anymore because Jaylen Brown isn't there. It's the Miami Heat. So the only team with a resume to say they've done anything in the last couple of years is the team that's down 2-0 to the Bucks. So at the end of the day, do we really believe that any team is a clear favorite in the Eastern Conference?
That's fair.
I don't think so.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Sky, do you have any more Sixer stuff?
I do not.
Okay, so let's do some Phillies because I was listening yesterday on the radio and Mike Gill was on fire talking about the Phillies and how they seem to be a team lacking pride. That was the word that he used, that they're lacking pride. I actually look and I say, baseball is the kind of sport that doesn't lend itself to urgency. Like, you're playing all these games and any one game doesn't, have like this imminent importance like you do in the NFL or college football. And so between the lack of urgency in the sport and what I actually think is the problem is a lack of leadership on the Phillies. You don't have that Derek Jeter, David Ortiz, Tom Brady kind of player who will walk into a dugout or a locker room and say, "Oh, enough's enough. Let's go." So my main question to you about the Phillies this early in the season, because baseball has ebbs and flows, and to pick any 1 month or few weeks and say, well, this is who they are, is unfair. Who would you say is the leader of this team right now?
I would argue that they don't have a leader.
Yeah, I think that's a problem.
It's a huge problem, but this is a baseball problem because
especially when you got a guy like Bryce Harper who's supposed to be this mega star, mega talent.
Sure,
you know, he's not stepping up as a leader.
He leads by example. Listen, I mentioned this the other day when I was on 97.3 ESPN. Remember the 93 Phillies? They had Macho Rowe. Those guys policed the team. That wasn't Jim Fragosi's team. That was Macho Rowe's team. That was Dalton. That was Kruk. That was Pete Incavilla. Those guys laid down the law. Look at the Yankees when they won. You know, Scott over here is wearing that Yankee jersey. Look at the Yankees in the late 90s. It was Bernie Williams. It was Paul O'Neill. It was all those guys. They laid down the law.
Yeah.
Baseball teams that don't have leadership in the locker room will always and forever never meet expectations.
Yeah, they're second and third place teams, no matter how talented they are. And the Phillies are talented. There's talent there.
Absolutely.
You can maybe win a division without too much leadership if you're in a weak division, like the National League East is this year. But at the end of the day, I don't see that guy who polices that locker room. I know it's supposed to be McCutchen and Real Muto and Harper, but they don't have those personalities. Harper plays to the fans. He's not playing to his teammates half the time. His teammates love him, but he's there. He signed the contract because he's selling the tickets. McCutchen's old, and Real Muto, as far as I'm concerned, he may be the best hitting catcher in baseball, but he doesn't talk much. Yeah. So the Phillies, what Dave Dombrowski is doing right now is he's saying, I'm evaluating this franchise. This is evaluation mode. And I don't know if the trade happens at the trade deadline or happens in the offseason. But he is going to blow up half this team, I feel like. I feel like he is letting this thing fester. So when he makes certain moves, he can say, well, you know, I watched this team for an entire year or half a year, and I saw XYZ didn't happen. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm trading all these people. I think that's what's going to happen.
I'm glad you brought up the Harper thing because I was always curious about what his teammates thought of him because he looks like a big me guy.
I mean, everything I've heard and read, his teammates like him a lot. He's one of those guys, you love him if he's on your team, you hate him on your team kind of guy. So, you know, that seems to be the attitude. I've actually heard that Harper actually goes out of his way to like help younger players, give them advice. He's did you guys happen to read Jeff Pearlman's book, The Three-Ring Circus?
I did not.
No, I did not either.
So in the book, it talks about how Shaq literally would take every rookie under his wing, and he would buy the rookie suits, and he would buy people cars, and he would basically take care of these guys. You didn't even make the team by the time the season happened, some of them, but he took care of them anyway. Apparently, Harper is a similar attitude where he's like, hey, you need something? I got you. Hey, you need this? It's all good. Or whatever it may be. He seems to be a guy that takes care of his teammates. So, awesome. Which is great. You're a great teammate.
Yeah.
You're not the leader of the team. You know, you could be a great teammate and not be the leader of the team. I mean, just look at the 2008 Phillies. That was a team that who was the leader of that team?
Howard Utley. I'm trying to think who else is on that team. Jimmy Rollins.
Well, think about it. Chase Utley just went home to his wife every night. Okay. Ryan Howard, not a very gregarious guy. It was Jimmy. And Jimmy was the one who would be abrasive, would say the crazy stuff, and he did that on purpose, right? By the way, he won a league MVP when he was in Philadelphia. And I think that there's something to be said with the fact that you had three superstars, quote unquote, at their positions, Howard, Utley, and Rollins. But Utley was the guy who led by example. Howard was the big piece. And Jimmy was the vocal one. And the problem is, unless you have a vocal leader in a baseball clubhouse, 162-game season, it drags.
Yeah, I like how you brought up Paul O'Neill for the Yankees. You're 100% right. I didn't even think about him, and it's a great point because while he was a very good player, he was not the best player on the Yankees. Right. But he was clearly one of the leaders of that team that would absolutely put his boot, you know, in someone's backside if need be. And you're absolutely right. It's needed. We're talking with Josh Hennick here, 97.3 ESPN Radio down here in South Jersey. I have some UFC stuff that I wanted to get to because I personally am a big fan. I'm sorry. Go ahead, please. By all means.
One more Philly thing before you get to the UFC. So did I read somewhere where the Phillies are on a 10-year playoff drought?
I believe it is 10 years. I believe it was 2011.
This year? Yeah, that's what I read, man. That's crazy. Are they frustrated with Girardi? Or is it they spend a lot of money? Is it the front office? Is it the wrong money? Is it the pitching staff?
So here's my thing. I think the people who blame Girardi are lazy because I've heard every year, whether it was Ryan Sandberg, Pete Mackanin, Gabe Kapler, now Girardi, this isn't the right manager.
Yeah.
Well, at what point is it not the right players?
Right.
I think the problem is when Matt Klintak stepped down and John Middleton made the comment that nobody wants to move their family in the middle of a pandemic and waited about 3 months to bring in Dave Dombrowski, he basically ruined this season. So you're stuck with Klintak's players for at least half the year.
Yeah.
And I think Dombrowski is in evaluation mode. I think the problem is this roster. I think that there is, outside of Harper, Real Muto, and Zach Wheeler, I don't think there's anybody exceptional on this roster.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. This is more or less the same team for the last 3, many of them 4 years. Yeah. So to expect it to be much different is, well, it's just unfair, like you said, to a manager. So to do some UFC stuff just to close out here. I watched. I'm a convert. You know, most of us were all boxing fans. If you're into the UFC, I'm sure at some point you were into boxing. Absolutely. And I'm a total convert now. Not that I won't watch boxing, but I love the UFC. This past event, was it last weekend with Oliveira and Chandler? Just an amazing fight, and that one fight kind of encapsulated why I love the UFC, because I was thinking about this before you came on. Back when when big Tyson fights were coming, and he would knock a guy out in the first or second round, while it was awesome, we were also kind of disappointed because it was over so quick. Right. I've never felt like that in a UFC fight. That fight was over in the second round. And I wasn't disappointed because in the first round, you kind of had the underdog, Chandler, kind of rock Oliveira, get him on, had him kind of, backing off and stumbling a little bit. And then we go to break, and you're thinking, can Chandler finish us off? Because he's a legit banger. I mean, he's an absolute beast. And then Oliveira comes back out in the second round and takes him out, and you're like, what the hell did I just watch? And I said this to Scotty last week when we knew you were coming on. I said, I'm at a point now with boxing where I can't stay awake for the fights. And with UFC, when it's over, I can't fall asleep. Like, it's just how it is. And I just think, and I want your opinion on this, do you think the UFC and MMA in general, but UFC is the biggest name, do you think it's just a better product right now than professional boxing?
I think it's a better product because of so if you go back to the 90s, when the UFC first started, and I don't mean like the very beginning where it was like basically a no holds barred, brawl, basically for like the first 10 UFC.
Right.
I mean, when it first started becoming mixed martial arts as we know it today, they built those fight cards. They didn't just headline those cards. They built fight cards. You go to a UFC fight to see the whole thing.
Right.
You mentioned Mike Tyson. You didn't go to watch the entire fight card. You showed up for the co-main event, made sure your tail was seated because you didn't want to miss Mike knock somebody out, right?
Right.
The UFC, I got to watch the prelims. I got to watch the full main card. Now I got money on the fight. Now I got a parlay on. Now I got a fantasy lineup going for the whole thing. I see these 20 commercials. I got to go get a Modelo beer. I got to sit back. I got to watch these fights. It's become an event. Yeah. So, I typically go out. All right. This is no secret. I've been saying this for years. I don't pay for the pay-per-view usually because I find that I spend less money if I go out to a local establishment than I do on the pay-per-view if I sit at home and watch it by myself. And I love running into the random people out who have random comments or questions or whatever because it's entertaining. I'm there to have a good time, right? But I get there at 8 p.m. and I plant myself at a stool in the bar, and I am there for 4 or 5 hours because it's an event. Yeah. And I'm not missing that event. And I think that's where UFC or most MMA organizations have it over boxing, because boxing is all about who's on the top of the card. And the UFC says, we got a great thing to look forward to, but if you miss the rest of the card, you might miss some crazy stuff.
Yeah. And to your point, it's not just the whole card. It's every other weekend. Like, it seems like every 2 or 3 weeks, there's a pay-per-view for the UFC, definitely once a month. And then you have your fight nights that are on ESPN. And they're they're constantly putting the best two fighters together. They're not waiting. We're excited. Well, I shouldn't say we're excited. The biggest fight coming up for this year is a retired Floyd Mayweather versus some YouTube guy, and that'll make a lot of money. But I'm just looking at him saying, is that good for the sport? Whereas we just came off I'm not exaggerating when I say after that Oliveira Chandler fight, I couldn't go to sleep. You're talking midnight, 12:30, 1 o'clock. I couldn't fall asleep. I got 2 little kids, man. Falling asleep is like part of my job. And I couldn't fall asleep because I was so just jacked up after seeing that. And I'm just like, man, this boxing is like a dying sport because you have to wait 6 months, a year to see something that's just worth watching. It's just, whereas the UFC is constantly, and we talked about this last week also, the UFC and Dana White brought us to some that was the first sporting event to really bring us to some normalcy. They were the first ones to put an event on, a live event, that people could watch. Yeah, go ahead with that.
Yeah, I just want to bring that. I'm so glad you brought that up because this is something I had the honor and the torture of being on the air 6 days a week during the pandemic.
Oh, I couldn't even imagine.
And I was telling people
sports talk with no sports.
Right. But I can tell you sports are coming back because this is a $1 billion industry, right? They're not going to have sports. It's ridiculous. Dana was so intent on being the first and proving that he could be the first, not just because his ego is huge, but because he said these fighters are not getting paid without fighting. So he knew that if he was going to take care of his fighters and take care of his employees and take care of everyone who's involved, he had to make this work. And when he went to Jacksonville and they put those couple first fights on, the whole sports world watched because they wanted to know, is there going to be a COVID spread?
Can you do this? Yeah.
Can you do this? And Dana proved it. And then every sports organization looked at the UFC and says, how can we adapt that? And then Dana took a step further. He went to Abu Dhabi to this fake fight island, which was an incredible marketing ploy. It really wasn't a fight island. It just was a corner of Abu Dhabi that nobody was using, pretty much. And he said, I'm going to establish a bubble. And everyone's like, ooh, a bubble? What is this bubble thing you're going to do? So, and then when he came back this year and said, I'm going to be the first sellout of a sporting event since the pandemic hit. And you know what? It was supposed to be a super spreader event, quote unquote. It wasn't. You know why?
Nothing.
Because Florida has COVID sniffing dogs. And these COVID sniffing dogs have more accuracy than the saliva tests.
How about that?
So they literally had a COVID-free building of 15,000 people shoulder to shoulder, screaming their head off back in April. And they proved that you can have sporting events in a pandemic with COVID, with all these problems, if you do it the right way. And Dana does not get enough credit for being the one guy who said, I have to do this because if I don't, we will die.
Yeah, I have a ton of respect and frankly admiration for Dana White because number one, he doesn't care what anybody thinks. He's going to do what he thinks is best for his organization and for his fighters, mainly for his organization. And number two, maybe more importantly, he's willing to take risks. They're measured risks. They're not wild hair risks. They're measured risks, but They are risks. If you're going to be the first to do something like that, to go against the grain, you better be ready to take first arrows. And he took them gladly, brushed them right off and moved forward. And frankly, whether it be the NBA, Major League Baseball, all the way down to the NFL, they all fell in line and followed Dana White's lead, which is, to me, absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing.
And really quick, I just want to add this in. I know Dana White gets a bad rap, but I've met Dana multiple times.
Depends on who you're talking to. It depends. It really does depend on who you're talking to.
It does. But the problem is the people who don't like Dana, it's because he doesn't lick their boots. Okay?
He doesn't need them.
But it's not just
that. He doesn't need the regular media.
Dana does so much for people that never gets talked about. All the money he gives to charity, all the fighters who he pays for their medical bills when he doesn't have to, all the times that he takes care of people, he doesn't have to do these things. There are so many stories out there about Dana White doing good that never gets publicized because he doesn't want the attention.
Yeah.
So he lets the world think that he's the villain, but secretly he's kind of an anti-hero.
Josh, I got one question for you before we let you go. We really appreciate you being on today. This has been an absolutely awesome conversation. In this past event that we were just talking about, Tony Ferguson, who is just an electric fighter, electric personality, lost, third straight loss for him. Who am I thinking of? McGregor has lost like 3 out of his last 4 fights, if you consider the Mayweather fight a loss.
I do.
You have to, at least in the sense of what I'm talking about here, you have to. My question here is, who is the face of the UFC right now, and what's it going to look like moving forward?
Well, I think the face of the UFC starts with heavyweights, because heavyweights still sell tickets. And now that it's no longer Stipe Miocic and it's Francis Ngannou, that's a good thing for the UFC. No offense to Stipe. I love him as a human being. He's a wonderful dude. He's a great family man, but he didn't want to do a lot of media. He wasn't a very marketable guy. Francis Ngannou is. Francis Ngannou is the UFC version of Mike Tyson. All right? Except without the craziness in his head. Okay.
Right.
Ngannou is marketable. Kamaru Usman at welterweight is marketable. Depending on what happens between Peter Yan and Aljamain Sterling in a couple months, whoever wins that fight, they're both marketable guys. The problem for the UFC is that they've had to go through so many morphs, so many evolutions, because when they were first starting, their whole thing was, we're going to promote people. Then people became larger than life. Your John Jones, your Conor McGregor, your Ronda Rousey, and they're all pretty much been passed by the wayside. So now it's on the UFC to get back to the old model. We're just going to promote everybody. And that's what they're doing. They're saying, if you got a belt, we're going to promote you. Yeah. And what? People still want to buy Conor McGregor versus Poirier. There's reports that they're worried that the McGregor-Poirier 3 fight is going to cause a outage in pay-per-view buys. Because if you remember, the first Abu Dhabi event, they were shut down in part of the world for about an hour. So they're trying to prepare right now for McGregor and Poirier to break like streaming records. And he's not even the champ.
Right.
This last fight set records for a fight card with a non-champ in the main event. That tells you that they're doing something right. So to me, the face of the UFC is whoever has that gold. And I think that's the right way to do things, because at the end of the day, what's the point of promoting some dude who can't even win, right?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the UFC is as healthy a sporting organization as there is. And to your point, I think what makes them so great is who they promote is winners. Whoever's winning, you're at the top of the list, and you're the one that's fighting. You're the one that gets seen. And what do people like more than anything other than 50-year-old men winning golf tournaments? They like winners. I mean, we love winners, man. We don't follow losers. We follow winners. And we absolutely, I think the UFC is in a great position. Josh, I have to thank you so much for joining us today. This was awesome. Hopefully we can do this again with you in the future, man. Thank you very much.
I appreciate it, man.
Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, we'll see you again.
All right, guys, take care.
You too.
That was Josh Hennig of 97.3 ESPN Radio down here in South Jersey. So we often have Mike Cohen on here with us, and I always call him like the voice of reason with our crazy. I like having Josh on because Josh, I don't know, it was like a wrestling match to see who has more energy. I just love talking with people who are loaded with energy. He was awesome. And boy, if you're looking for someone who knows Philly sports, goodness gracious.
I think he knows the dog's name of the GM for the Eagles. Holy shit!
I felt a little like incompetent with some of the players that he was bringing up. Done. So awesome. It was great, and hopefully he'll join us again in the future with as a guest on here. Hey, let's finish up AFC East, because I know we're keeping you from your Knicks game, although
it's not going great early.
You can't feel too excited. Hey, listen, to give you some credit, or give the Knicks some credit, no one expected them to be in this position this year. So to even be here with Randall, RJ Barrett, listen, you got to be thrilled that they're in a playoff game right now.
Yeah, and
it's almost like 20 years of futility. So
and they got the first round home court, which is nice, but they are definitely not the same team that we watched all year.
They're losing right now.
It's a different atmosphere. Yeah, they're losing right now, but just about to go to the second quarter. Well, listen, it's a different animal. It is. The first game, Randall played horrible, and they lost by a game winner with 0.9 seconds.
You know what they need to do, dude? They need to find a way to keep Randall, but you need to bring in a bigger star.
He's a number 2.
He's a nice number 2 or a really good number 3. Like if RJ Barrett becomes a 2, that you bring in like a – go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. Like Randall, Barrett, quickly, but you need a stud. You need like a Donovan Mitchell or like someone like someone –
and it's New York. You should, if you're even a moderately decent team, you should be able to draw somebody in, right? You should be able to draw somebody in.
They were so unattractive for 20 years, man. That's why it's like it's tough to flip the switch. But I think,
I just don't know if Thibodeau is the coach for the long haul because he just eventually rubs everybody thin, and
then I think he wears these guys out too. That's
what I'm saying. Like with the style of play, it's just hard. In this current era of basketball where nobody plays defense, he preaches defense to the nth degree, and it's just
not only that, all these fucking days off.
He deserves a lot of credit.
These guys want to rest, and he doesn't want to rest anybody. He wants,
he deserves a lot of credit because everybody put him in his coffin, and here he is. What were they, 4 seed?
Yes, sir.
So he deserves a lot of credit. All right, New York Jets, very active off season, you got to say, but I would say restrained in their activism. They didn't just we've talked about the Jets a lot, so we don't have to go crazy with it, but I like what they did. They spent money, but they spent wisely, and they spent in areas of need, and I feel like they got deals. Like it was money wisely spent. The biggest names were Corey Davis and Carl Lawson, filling 2 huge needs. They also got another dude, Keelan Cole. The 2 receivers that they did sign, everywhere I look, when you look at people evaluating Jets off season, was like you're getting players on the upside. They're not already stars. They're guys that look like could be stars, and you got them at decent prices. So, and then obviously with their draft, Zach Wilson, Elijah Moore, Vera Tucker, Michael Carter. I mean, there's just a lot to be excited about if you're a Jets fan. But we've talked about this before a million times. Patience. Patience.
And you can even throw Denzel Mims there too. He only second year, he missed half the year last year, so he's a young guy on the upside too.
All their draft from last year, you can look and say, dude, none of those guys had OTAs. None of those guys had an off season. Most of them were injured and didn't even get to start the season healthy. You got to think that coming into the season, it's going to be better just for those guys because they actually will be able to practice in the off season. So as a Jets fan, you should be excited, but you should be guarded. They're very, 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 very young. And I don't even just mean the players. You have a rookie head coach. You have a first-time play caller in your offensive coordinator. You have a rookie quarterback that's probably going to start, which is if there's any kind of complaint I have right now, and I really don't have any other than this. I wish they would I still wish – I don't care – who it is. I wish they would bring in a veteran quarterback to start the first 6 to 8 games of the season.
You know what name that came up because we brought this up last week about the Jets with Hoyer going back to the Patriots. How would you feel about Gardner Minshew?
I'd have no problem with that. I would love that. I would love that. Also because he's a personality, and he would he would probably end up stealing a couple extra starts just on personality. Just because people like him and his mullet and all the nonsense with the short shorts and his cock and balls like hanging out the bottom of his shorts, whatever he's got going on, like all his nuttiness would probably buy him another game or 2, which I want Zach Wilson on the bench for most of the season. So,
I don't have much to add to that. New coaching staff. The defense is a little weak. I think they're going to start slow, obviously for many reasons, but I think if you show improvement toward the back half, Thanksgiving on, now you got something to build on to next year. You start cooking a little bit better.
Here's your schedule to start the season. At Carolina, which is fascinating. Of course, we mentioned Sam Darnold is there. I'm not going to lie. I would love to see them win that game, even if they end up losing the next 4, which is very possible because then they're home against New England, at Denver, which is the Jets. In my lifetime, they do not go west well. They do not go west well.
Didn't the Broncos kill Altoon's career in Denver a long time ago?
I don't know, but I remember the Jets winning like 3 games in a row. This is going back maybe to when Fitzpatrick was there. They win like 3 games in a row, and they're like, oh, they're rolling. They go out west to play a 1-win Raiders team and get smoked by the Raiders, and you're like, how the hell did you win 3 games against winning teams and then lose to a 1-win, a terrible Raiders team? But they don't travel west well. And then they got Tennessee, who I have major question marks about, but they have a great running back and they have a very good quarterback and they have a good head coach. I expect them to lose that game. And then they go at Atlanta, where I think Atlanta's a bad team, but they still have a better an excellent quarterback, and they're on the road. I don't expect them to go win that game. So I could really we looked at their whole schedule. We talked off air about their whole schedule, and I see parts of the season where I think they could go 3-2 in certain parts and do pretty well. I think it's a really tough start to the season for the Jets, man, and I can really see them being 1-4, 0-5.
Well, week 6 bye week sucks too, man. That's an early, especially another week of the season. That's really early.
It's early, so it does concern me. But so the whole thing with the Jets, if you're a Jets fan, you need patience. And what you really want to see is you want to see them pull off some upsets. You want to see them beat the Patriots once. You want to see them beat Miami once. You want to see them beat Buffalo once. You want to see they're not going to do all 3 of those, but you'd like to see some upsets. You don't want to see them just beat teams that they should beat. Like, but even if I don't know who that is, but
even if you beat the Titans or beat the Bengals, like just show something. Like
there needs to be a handful of games, 2-3 games this year where you either beat someone you're not supposed to, or you take, Carolina did this a couple times last year where they lost games to teams that they probably should. They were underdogs too, but they took them right down to the wire. Like, it was a tough game.
Yeah.
They made a game of it and you didn't know what was going to happen. And, that was that. So that's my feeling on the Jets. So you want to put them in some kind of order here?
I would love to. You want me to go 4th place to 1st place?
Your 4th place team, yeah.
My 4th place team is unfortunately your New York Jets at 6 and 11.
I would take 6 wins. I gotta be honest with you. If they come up with 6 wins, I'd be kind of okay with that. I'm not gonna lie. I would prefer 7, which would beat the Vegas over and under, but I would take 6.
My 3rd place team is the Miami Dolphins at 7 and 10.
I don't like to say this, but I agree with you on this one too. I don't know if 7 and 10. I can see 9 and 8. I think they're a much more complete team, and I don't personally think Tua is as bad as a lot of people out there say. Plus, he's going to have significantly more weapons this year. He's also going to have an entire offseason with his staff and his players, and I can see them being a little better than 7 and 10, but I do still put them in 3rd.
My 2nd place team is the New England Patriots at 8 and 9.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't love this division, as you can tell.
So I'm with you on that. As far as I see them 2nd or 3rd with Miami. Yeah. I see them too, right there. I could see them being 9 and 8. Also 10 and 7. Is 10 and 7 a good record?
I think it's got to be.
Is that a good record? Isn't that the old 9 and 7, which we looked at as meh?
Well, but could it be the old 10 and 6? You don't know. It's you just don't know.
I could see them being 10 and 7 because you're going to play the Jets twice. You got New Orleans. You got Houston on the schedule. I can see them winning 10 games for sure.
And the 1st place team we both have is the Buffalo Bills, and I have them at 11 and 6.
I got the Buffalo Bills in 1st place too, and I would put them more like 12 and 5. I actually think I thought Buffalo was really good last year. I think adding Emmanuel Sanders, an experienced pro who's been part of playoff runs before. I think it's a relatively soft division. I could see them winning 12. I could even see them, being honest with you, I could see them winning 13 games.
Yeah, they were 13 and 3 last year. Though this should be 13 and 4. So, yeah. Listen, I'm like,
if you're Buffalo, you're rooting for Justin Herbert to take another step, and I almost said San Diego again, for Chargers to take another step and challenge Kansas City, because I think Buffalo versus Kansas City in Buffalo is a different game than Buffalo versus Kansas City in Kansas City.
Especially
I think both of those.
Yeah.
Oh, I think both of those teams have a really significant home field advantage, and whoever gets it has just a monster advantage. I really do. I really do.
Right. I agree.
So, all right, my man. That's number 18 in the books. And I did my research this week. I don't know if you
this
did.
This is gotta be an easy one for you, right?
Peyton Manning, right?
Yeah, that's it. And then
Okay.
starts and finishes. Yeah,
I did my research. I said, dude, we can't keep like wondering who these numbers are. So I did my research, and Peyton Manning. There's a couple other ones that are pretty interesting 18s. I forget who the hell they are, because once you get to Peyton Manning, who the hell else is there, right?
Right, exactly.
When it showed up, it was like Peyton Manning in his Denver uniform. I'm like, look at this mother. But yeah, listen. This was a great podcast for us. Josh joining us was just huge. I love his energy.
Yeah,
I love ESPN. So it's all good. And and we got 18 in the books. So another good one. I'm Pete Colasano. For my friend Scott Bracey, you've been listening to Bump and Run. We'll catch you guys next week.
Later.